Welcome back to my channel Souls of the Peculiar. Today I will continue the video series, Strange Minds of History, the ones we never understood. He said, he lived in a barrel to feel free. You're sitting in the quiet, just you, and a question. If you gave up everything, money, fame, comfort, would you finally be free? Or would the silence drive you mad? There was a man who tried that question on for size. Not as a metaphor, not as an idea to sip with wine, but as a life, a body, a breath, a war against what everyone else called reality. His name was Diogenes of Sinope, but to the world, he became something else. The madman with a lantern. Tonight, you're not just hearing his story, you're stepping into it. Year, around 350 BC. Place, Athens, Greece Empire, under Macedonian shadow, after Peloponnesian Wars. The city stinks of ambition. Philosophers shout in the agora, each trying to sell truth like olive oil. Politicians lie in marble halls, while beggars rot in alleyways. Behind every stone wall, there's a mask. Athens is brilliant, but bloated. You walk along the streets and people wear togas that cost more than your home. They talk of Socratic ideals, of Plato's forms, of celestial justice. But they step over the hungry and pretend not to see the whores or the crippled boys. And then, you see him, not walking, not preaching, just sitting, in a giant hollow barrel. Naked, unblinking, skin darkened by the sun, beard wild like ivy down a wall. His eyes, empty, or perhaps too full to see. His name is Diogenes. He is the disgrace of the city. He is the whisper of something unsettling. He is the man who asked, what if truth is ugly, and the only way to love it is to live ugly too? The beginning of a collapse. He wasn't always like this. He was born in Sinope, a prosperous city by the Black Sea. His father was a banker, a man of order and coin. Young Diogenes was meant to inherit that neat, respectable life. But then came the counterfeiting scandal. Some say it was Diogenes who defaced the coins. Others say it was his father. Either way, they were exiled, thrown out, shamed, sent away from home with nothing but disgrace in their pockets. But something strange happened. Instead of mourning his downfall, Diogenes smiled. If the currency of men is false, he said, why not deface it? He came to Athens not to start over, but to burn it all down. Entering the Cynics, he found a teacher, Antisthenes, a student of Socrates who had turned bitter and sharp. Antisthenes believed virtue came from hardship, that to live according to nature meant to abandon comfort, luxury, even shame. Most couldn't bear his teachings. But Diogenes didn't just listen, he outdid them all. He became the living embodiment of cynicism. And not just in ideas, in action. He begged, he slept in a barrel, he ate scraps like a dog, he urinated in public, he masturbated in daylight. If only it were as easy to banish hunger by rubbing my stomach, he once quipped. Was he mad? Or was he peeling back the hypocrisy of the world? The barrel. Let's talk about the barrel. It wasn't a wooden keg like today. It was a pithos, a massive ceramic jar used for storing grain or wine. Imagine curling up every night in a cold, hard shell. No mattress, no fire, just your breath and the rats. But to Diogenes, it was liberation. The more I own, the more I am owned, he said. He stripped life to its bare bones. No temple, no walls, not even shame, just skin and sky and breath and truth. He called it freedom. The Athenians called it insanity. A mind that refused to lie. He wasn't like Socrates, who questioned politely. He wasn't like Plato, who wrote an elegant allegory. No, Diogenes was brutal, direct, sometimes cruel. He barked like a dog at powerful men. He defecated during speeches to mock their content. He told stories with his body, not his words. If someone praised the wealth of kings, he'd squat and relieve himself. If someone spoke of courage, he'd slap them to see if they flinched. He believed truth wasn't hidden in words. It was buried under layers of fear. And if he had to tear your pride out of your mouth to find it, so be it. The cold of the night. At night, the city sleeps. Lamps dim. Merchants snore. Lovers whisper under linen. But Diogenes remains awake. He doesn't pray. He doesn't plan. He just watches the stars and lets the cold wrap around him like a second skin. In those hours, you wonder, is he lonely? Is he broken? Or is he more whole than any man with 10 servants? He once said, "I am a citizen of the world. No borders, no allegiance, no one to lie to, and no one to lie for." Misunderstood or prophet? Some spat at him. Others feared him. The children laughed, but sometimes they stared too long, as if part of them wondered if he saw something no one else did. He was insulted, beaten, dragged by the ankle from city to city, but he never flinched. Because once you've lost everything and survived, nothing has power over you. He didn't care to be understood. He cared to be free. The ending of the beginning. You stand there now, watching him curl into the barrel like a hermit crab into a shell. The sky above is dark. The city behind is lit. But he has no walls, no locks, no lies. Tomorrow, he'll do something else insane. Tomorrow, he might change everything again. But tonight, he sleeps, free, unburdened, and perhaps more awake than anyone else. What if madness is just a kind of honesty that hurts too much to look at? The day he walked naked through the agora. You're not supposed to look, but you do. You weren't expecting it. No one was. A man completely naked walking slowly through the crowded agora. The marketplace is packed today. Women selling figs, philosophers debating beside statues, slave traders haggling near the steps. And then, him. No robe, no sandals, no shame. Your first instinct is disbelief, then laughter, then discomfort. You don't know whether to mock him or follow him. He's not drunk. He's not confused. He's calm. And that makes it worse. Because madness screams. But this man chooses this. He's Diogenes. And today, he's walking naked, not to shock you, but to mirror you. Athens, 348 BC. This is the Golden City, the birthplace of democracy, theater, and logic. Men here invent new definitions of virtue every afternoon. They argue about the shape of the soul and the immortality of truth while sipping wine behind shaded columns. But underneath the surface, everything is bound by image. A man's value lies in how well he wears his robe, how calmly he speaks in the Stoic style, how fluently he can quote Homer or Aristotle. Everything is curated, polished, pretend, and then Diogenes walks in bare as the day he was born. His presence is a blade cutting through silk, shamelessness as a philosophy. You think this is a joke? That he's just a street lunatic? No. For Diogenes, this isn't about rebellion. It's a demonstration of his deepest belief. That virtue comes not from hiding our nature, but from embracing it without fear. To be shameless in Greek is anaideia, a word they loathe. To them, it's moral rot. But Diogenes turns the word inside out. For him, shamelessness is the first step toward honesty. What does clothing do, he asks. It hides our bodies, creates illusions, breeds vanity, and pretends we are more than animals. But we are animals. To him, The difference between a man and a dog is that the dog doesn't pretend. The dog, among men. In fact, he welcomes the insult. They call him the dog, and he grins like one. Yes, he says, I am a dog. I fawn on those who give me food, bark at those who don't, and bite scoundrels. To Diogenes, the dog is the ultimate cynic. It doesn't hoard. It doesn't lie. It doesn't care if you're a king or a slave. It sleeps in the street and eats what it finds. It's free from the masks men wear. And so Diogenes imitates it. He sleeps in alleys. He eats raw onions. He urinates where he stands. He believes every time you feel shame, you're being controlled. And if someone can make you feel shame, they own you. The naked walk now. Picture the scene again. The sun is hot. The marble steps of the Acropolis glow white. The air is full of buzz and barter. And then, this bare-footed, bare-skinned man strolls calmly through the center of it all. He doesn't cover himself. He doesn't apologize. He makes no announcement. But his body, unhidden, is the loudest statement in the city. Women gasp. Philosophers scoff. Children point. Behold, he says quietly, a free man. No one knows where to look. But the truth is, the discomfort doesn't come from his body. It comes from the idea that maybe, just maybe, he is more honest than everyone else. Psychological warfare. This isn't performance art. It's war. A war against illusions, against vanity, against the thousands of tiny compromises people make to survive in polite society. Clothes are symbols. They tell the world who we pretend to be: the merchant, the priest, the wise man. Diogenes removes that symbol, and in doing so, exposes the falsehood of every man around him. He walks naked, not to degrade, but to dismantle hierarchy. He's not showing off. He's stripping away. Shame is control. Ask yourself this: what would it take for you to do what he did? Could you walk through your modern city with nothing but your thoughts and your skin? No phone, no brand, no digital identity. Could you be seen, truly seen, with no filter? Diogenes isn't obsessed with nudity. He's obsessed with unmasking. He once defecated in the theater. Not to disgust, but to make people question why nature is obscene, but war is not. He once ate in the marketplace, not because he was hungry, but because he was told, "No decent man eats in public." "Then I shall not be a decent man," he replied, and bit into the onion. He forces society to see itself, and society hates him for it. Alone in the open. You think this freedom is easy? Imagine the loneliness of being the only person in the city who no longer plays the game. Imagine walking into a temple and not bowing. Imagine sleeping beside dogs while your old friends pass you by. He laughs, yes. But sometimes his laughter is hollow, because what Diogenes has found is not comfort. It's clarity, and clarity often comes with coldness. If he lived today, if Diogenes lived in 2025, where would you find him? Probably not online. He'd smash the algorithm with a rock. You'd see him sleeping under a highway or walking barefoot through a shopping mall, mocking the mannequins. He'd say Instagram is a theater of ghosts. He'd live stream his bowel movements just to prove your values were digital illusions. You'd call him crazy, or maybe an artist. You'd block him, or maybe follow him. But the question would linger, wouldn't it? Why does he make me so uncomfortable? The last glance, he's finished now. His walk ends at the foot of a statue. He sits beneath it, sweat rolling down his chest, unbothered. The crowd disperses, murmuring. Some still laugh, others shake their heads. But a few stay. A few watch him, eyes narrowed, not with judgment, but with doubt. not doubting him, doubting themselves. And in that silence, Diogenes smiles, because shame is cracking, and from the cracks, freedom leaks through. What if the only thing standing between you and freedom was your fear of being seen? Next part title: The Lantern He Carried in Broad Daylight. Diogenes begins wandering Athens with a lantern in the sunlight, claiming to search for an honest man. We unravel the parable, the reactions, and the quiet despair behind the gesture. The lantern he carried in broad daylight. You see it before you understand it. A flicker, a glint. The flame of a lantern small, trembling in the breeze cutting through the middle of the day. The Athenian sun is blinding. No one carries a lamp at noon. It's absurd. The kind of thing that makes you smirk, then furrow your brow. But the man holding it isn't smiling. It's Diogenes. Again. This time not naked, not barking, just walking, quietly, with a lantern raised to eye level. When asked why, he answers with a shrug that has become legend. I am looking for an honest man. The year the philosopher gave up on men. It is around 345 BC. Athens, still reeling from the death of Socrates decades earlier, pretends to care about truth. Philosophers fill the marketplace like bees in a cracked hive. Every corner hums with rhetoric, ethics, justice, democracy. But no one listens. They just perform. It's a time of rot wearing perfume, of gold-leafed speeches disguising greed. And in the middle of that dazzling filth walks a man holding a flame to their faces. You're there. You hear the murmurs. What madness is this? Looking for an honest man in daylight? But the deeper madness is this. No one laughs for long, because deep down, something about it hurts. The paradox of the flame. Diogenes doesn't stumble. He's not searching the ground. He's not waving the lantern like a prophet. He simply holds it steady and gazes into people's eyes as he passes. One by one, some flinch, some scoff, some turn their faces away. Because when Diogenes looks at you with that flame, he isn't just searching, he's weighing you. Are you honest, or are you just well-rehearsed? The lantern, absurd in the sun, becomes a mirror, not of your body, but of your inner decay. Psychological warfare, again. You start to see the pattern. Diogenes doesn't attack physically. He doesn't fight with swords or conspiracies. He uses symbols, weapons of the mind. A barrel becomes a home, nudity becomes a sermon, and a lantern becomes a question. If truth exists, why can't I find a single honest man? This isn't a joke, it's grief, a mourning disguised as mischief. He's not mocking you. He's already given up on you. The sickness of pretending. Let's be honest. If someone did this in your city, walked through a crowd with a flashlight at noon claiming to seek real people, what would you say? You'd post it online, mock it. Then scroll past influencers telling you to live your truth. But Diogenes isn't scrolling. He's diagnosing. He sees every polite smile, every word meant to flatter, every argument designed not to seek truth, but to win applause. And in that sea of performance, he's drowning. I searched the city with a lantern, but all I found were masks, he says. Not evil men, not murderers, just liars. All of them. Even the gentle ones, especially them. A brief moment in the crowd. A young man follows him for a while, nervous, intrigued, silent. Eventually, he gathers the courage to speak. Diogenes, what does an honest man look like? The old man doesn't stop walking. He does not borrow virtue. He does not decorate weakness with clever words. He does not pretend to be better than he is. The boy nods, unsure. What if I try to be that? Diogenes smiles for the first time all day. Then drop the word try. The torchbearer of disappointment. We must understand, this isn't just performance, it's confession. This is a man who loved philosophy enough to destroy it, who sought truth so deeply that, upon not finding it, chose to live as its ghost. The lantern isn't a tool of search. It's a funeral candle for the concept of honesty. That's the irony. He's not looking for an honest man. He's mourning the fact that he can't find one. And still, he walks. What would he see in you? You, listening now, quiet in the dark of your room, or walking along a bright sidewalk. What would Diogenes see if he passed you? Would you meet his eyes? Would you squint at the flame and pretend not to see it? Could you even endure the silence of his gaze? Most couldn't. Most can't even look in the mirror without softening the truth. We lie to fit in. We lie to be loved. We lie to feel less alone. Diogenes knew this, and it broke him. So he turned that break into a life. If he lived in 2025, imagine him now. A man with a cracked iPhone flashlight, walking down a subway platform, shining it into faces, staring, searching, quiet. He wouldn't trend. He wouldn't go viral. He'd vanish between TikTok swipes, maybe get arrested. But maybe, just maybe, a few people would wake up. A few would stop pretending. A few would feel ashamed of their shame. That's what he wanted. Not revolution. Just a single, honest man. Even if that man had to be you. The lantern goes out. By dusk, he's back in his barrel. The flame gone. The day wasted again. But still, he stares at the sky like it owes him something. Or maybe he owes it an apology. You wonder what he prays for. If he prays at all? Probably not salvation, just silence. A silence uncorrupted by performance. Would you pass his test? Or would his flame flicker and move on? Next part title: When he called Plato a cabbage seller. Diogenes storms into Plato's academy and mocks the great philosopher's theories with savage wit. We explore his feud with abstract philosophy and why Diogenes believed ideas were less useful than onions. When he called Plato a cabbage seller, truth walks in barefoot. Not with scrolls, not with fanfare, not with polite silence and academic robes. Truth crashes through the door, smells like onions, and looks like it hasn't bathed in a month. You're sitting in Plato's academy, the center of thought, the pride of Athens. Every column here has heard the footsteps of Socrates. Every lecture echoes with the longing for pure reason. Young minds gather in quiet rows, hoping to sip truth from the lips of the master. But then, the door creaks open, slowly, and he enters. Not a student, not a philosopher, but a man who lives in a barrel, Diogenes. And he's here to insult the smartest man in the city. Athens, 344 BC. The air is still, the olives are ripe, and Plato is explaining the theory of forms. He says, there is a perfect version of every object. A perfect cup, a perfect horse, a perfect man. What we see here on earth are only shadows of that ideal. Truth is not in the thing, but in the idea of the thing. The students nod. Some write it down. It's brilliant, elegant, immortal. Until Diogenes clears his throat. He's standing near a potted plant, not invited. And in one hand, he's holding a raw cabbage. He lifts it in the air and announces, "Behold, a perfect fart." The War of Two Worlds. Let's make this clear. Diogenes didn't hate Plato. He hated what Plato represented: abstraction, complexity. The idea that truth lived in the clouds instead of in the mud. Plato's world was order, theory, refinement. Diogenes' world was spit, snot, and simplicity. To Plato, humans strive to become divine. To Diogenes, we only become free when we accept we're animals. So when Plato lectured about ideal justice, Diogenes asked, "Can your justice cook a cabbage?" It wasn't sarcasm. It was an attack. Not on Plato, the man, but on Plato, the dreamer. The cabbage incident. One day, Diogenes is seen squatting in the street, tearing cabbage leaves with his teeth. A student approaches, scoffing. "If you learned to flatter kings, you wouldn't have to eat cabbage on the ground." Diogenes spits out a stem. "And if you learned to eat cabbage, you wouldn't have to flatter kings." The insult echoes like a slap, because it cuts through the illusion. Philosophy, to Diogenes, isn't something you discuss in robes. It's something you digest, defecate, live. Plato calls him a Socrates gone mad. He wasn't wrong. Diogenes took Socrates' love of questioning and burned the books around it. Socrates asked questions to seek truth. Diogenes asked questions to destroy pretending. When Plato defined man as a featherless biped, Diogenes plucked a chicken and stormed into the academy. "Here is Plato's man!" he shouted, holding the poor bird like a trophy. Plato had to revise the definition to a featherless biped with broad nails. It's a joke, but also a revelation. Diogenes forced thinkers to confront how easily words betray reality. The psychology of mockery. Why mock? Why be so cruel? Because Diogenes understood the psychology of status. He knew that the higher a man climbed into abstract thought, the more he feared being pulled down into the dirt. So he dragged them there. He made philosophers feel their own stomachs growl, made them smell their sweat, reminded them that they too would defecate before dying. "Why do you cover your body but not your lies?" he once asked a rich student. It's not mockery for its own sake. It's dissection by humiliation. If he lived in 2025, imagine Plato as a polished TED Talk speaker. Whiteboard, turtleneck, slides full of animated diagrams on the ideal self. Then imagine Diogenes walking in, barefoot, chewing on raw broccoli, holding a dead phone with no SIM card. He'd interrupt mid-sentence to ask, "Can your theory survive a hunger strike? Would you still be wise if no one filmed you?" He'd ruin the vibe, and he'd be right to do so. Diogenes' hatred was rooted in love. Strange to say, but Diogenes didn't mock because he hated thinking. He mocked because he loved truth too much to let it die in a metaphor. He wanted the truth to be chewed, not chanted. He knew that words could seduce, that elegance could disguise lies. So he brought truth back to the gutter, where it started, where it still breathes. Plato, silenced for a moment. There's a story that one day, Plato invited Diogenes to dinner. The room was quiet, tense, regal. As they ate, Plato spoke of justice, harmony, and moral idealism. Diogenes wiped his mouth, then slowly reached under the table and farted. The room froze. A slave dropped a cup. "That," he said, "is reality. Let's discuss it." Plato never invited him again. But for a brief moment, he was speechless, because no definition could contain the weight of that interruption. The echo in the columns. That day at the academy, the one with the cabbage, Plato, is visibly irritated. He doesn't respond. He continues the lecture. But something has changed. The students aren't sure anymore. One of them stares at his notes, reading the word justice over and over, and it feels thinner than before. The cabbage on the floor begins to rot, But the doubt, that grows. What if wisdom isn't elegant? What if truth stinks, like a raw vegetable pulled from the dirt? Would you still want it then? Next part title: He slept with dogs and laughed at kings. Diogenes embraces animal instincts and turns society's hierarchy into a joke. We explore how his behavior among beggars and animals reveals deeper philosophies about power, pride, and hypocrisy. He slept with dogs and laughed at kings. You see him again in the filth. Not on a porch, not in a lecture hall, but curled beside a stray dog beneath the marble steps of the Stoa. The city bustles above white togas, clean sandals, whispers of philosophy floating like incense through the air. But Diogenes? He's buried in the gutter, wrapped in fleas and sleep. And when you pass, covering your nose, he doesn't stir. He just mutters, "Why sleep in a palace when the dogs teach you how to live?" This is not a fall from grace. It's a choice, a declaration. Because Diogenes of Sinope, the man they call the dog, has found a freedom in filth that kings can't buy with gold. Athens, 343 BC. The sun has risen. The city stretches. Priests bless the gods. Merchants open their stalls and boys rehearse speeches in the shadows of statues. But beneath the layers of marble and civility, something stinks. A beggar limps past a banker. A philosopher ignores a starving child. A general kisses his wife before marching off to enslave another village. And in the cracks of that hypocrisy, Diogenes lives. He doesn't hide from the stench. He becomes it, so that he can show you what you refuse to smell. Why the dog? You've heard it before. His nickname, the dog. It was meant as an insult, but Diogenes wore it like a crown. Dogs, to him, were perfect creatures. They ate when hungry, slept when tired, licked their wounds, defended their space, and most importantly, they never pretended. Dogs do not flatter kings, he once said. They do not write poetry to impress the gods. They simply are. And so, Diogenes became one. Sleeping among the forgotten. He chose the streets, not because he had to, but because he didn't want to lie. He slept where the beggars slept, not for pity, but for clarity. He believed that sleeping in silk sheets made men forget how to think. That wine dulled the soul. That perfume was a way to mask decay. So he lay on cobblestones, let his hair go wild, bathed in rain. He became a living reminder of the body's truth. No illusions, no fabric, just skin and breath and the ticking of a heart too stubborn to submit. When a king walked by, there's a story. A rich Athenian noble, son of a governor, once passed Diogenes sleeping beside a dead dog. Disgusted, he kicked dust at him. "Get up, animal," he spat. "You shame the city." Diogenes stirred, rubbed his eyes, looked up. "I shame the city," he said. "You pay whores, lie to senators, poison your enemies, and call that civilized. I sleep with honesty. I am the city." The noble turned red, said nothing, walked away. But the bystanders, they remembered. Laughter as a weapon. Diogenes didn't shout, he laughed. Not the laugh of a fool, but the slow, jagged laugh of someone who's seen the foundations rot. When a general boasted of conquering 100 cities, Diogenes replied, "And yet you've not conquered your greed." When a scholar explained his 20-year study of astronomy, Diogenes asked, "And in that time, did you learn how to be kind?" He turned every victory into a question, every honor into a mirror. And in that mirror, people saw how hollow they'd become. The psychology of animalism. Let's go deeper. Diogenes didn't worship dirt. He worshipped instinct. He believed that before men learned to lie, they lived like animals, and that was sacred. So he trained himself to listen to his hunger, not his schedule, to scratch his itches, to sleep without fear, to eat without shame. He believed philosophy had become a game of words, designed by cowards too scared to admit that truth starts in the belly, not the brain. And if that meant barking at senators, so be it. If he lived in 2025, you'd find him under a freeway, sleeping between plastic bags, a cardboard sign that reads, "I bark at liars. I eat truth." You'd scroll past, maybe film him, maybe laugh. But if he woke and saw you, he'd smile. "You're more homeless than I am," he'd say. "You just don't know it yet." Because to him, homelessness isn't the lack of walls, it's the abundance of lies. And your mortgage, your curated online persona, your self-help books, just leashes, decorated with gold. The dogs he loved. The real dogs of Athens, they loved him. They lay beside him at night, followed him in the day, because they saw no difference between him and them. And Diogenes loved them back, not with pet names or treats, but with mutual recognition. He saw in them the kind of courage no philosopher dared write about, the courage to exist without excuse. The night he howled. They say one night, during a thunderstorm, Diogenes stood on a hillside overlooking the city. The rain poured, the wind howled, and so did he. He threw his head back and barked at the sky long, loud, laughing barks. People said he'd finally lost his mind. But if you asked him, he'd say it was the only sane response to a world that had dressed madness in marble and called it civilization. Beneath the stars, he's asleep again, back curled against a pillar, a mangy dog breathing slow beside him, a torn cloak for a blanket. The stars watching from above, silent, indifferent, honest. People pass. Some whisper, but none dare wake him, because something about him feels untouchable. Like he's made peace with the part of humanity most of us spend our whole lives trying to escape. Would you dare sleep beside dogs? Not out of desperation, but out of freedom. Could you laugh at a king and mean it? Next part title: The Day Alexander the Great Came to See Him. The most powerful man in the world visits the freest. In this tense encounter, Diogenes says only one thing: stand out of my sunlight. We analyze the psychology of power, ego, and what it means to own nothing and fear no one. The day Alexander the Great came to see him. You can hear the footsteps before you see him. Leather boots, dozens of them, marching in unison across the sun-scorched stones of Athens. Silver armor gleams like knives in the noon light. The city quiets. Even the birds seem to hold their breath, because he has arrived. Alexander, son of Philip, king of Macedon, conqueror of cities, pupil of Aristotle. He's only 20, but already the world bows when he enters a room, except for one man, Diogenes. He doesn't rise, doesn't kneel, doesn't even blink. Instead, he stays sprawled on the ground, sunbathing like a lizard half-naked, scratching his belly. The king of the known world has come to speak to the madman in the barrel. And what happens next? It becomes legend. Athens, 336 BC, a meeting of worlds. The city is tense. Rumors swirl. Alexander is in town, and he's not here for war. He's here to meet the philosopher who needs nothing. The king wants to see the beggar who mocks kings. A strange thing, isn't it? Power, drawn to those who do not seek it. Like a lion sniffing at a sleeping dog, unsure who's more dangerous. Diogenes lies in his usual place, just outside the city, under a fig tree, sun pouring over him like honey. No robe, no offerings, just a cracked clay cup and a smug expression. Alexander approaches, and the air splits with silence. "Ask of me any favor." Alexander stands over him, tall and regal. His soldiers circle. The crowd watches, breathless. "I am Alexander the Great," he says. "Ask of me any favor and I shall grant it." It's a line meant to dazzle, to seduce. He's offered kingdoms to lesser men. But Diogenes doesn't look up. He just squints, shifts slightly on the ground, and replies, "Yes, there is one thing you can do for me." Alexander leans forward. "Stand out of my sunlight." That's it. That's the whole answer. And the soldiers reach for their swords, not in defense of Alexander's life, but his ego. But the king, he laughs. Power meets purity. Think about what just happened. One man commands 40,000 soldiers. The other owns nothing, not even shoes. And yet it's Alexander who feels small. Why? Because Diogenes doesn't need him. He doesn't need anyone. And when you meet someone you cannot bribe, flatter, or threaten, you are suddenly not the master anymore. Diogenes lives on crumbs, sleeps on stone, drinks from puddles. He has made himself invincible by needing less than nothing. That day, Alexander realizes Diogenes has already conquered the one thing he has in himself, the psychology of untouchability. Let's go deeper. What scares a ruler? Not a rival army, not rebellion, but someone who can't be ruled. And that's Diogenes. He cannot be punished. He welcomes exile. He laughs at insult. He owns no property. He sleeps under the sky. How do you threaten a man who has nothing to lose because he's already thrown it all away? He's not brave because he's reckless. He's brave because he's free from craving. Even Alexander's glory, his parades, his victories, they stink of craving. And Diogenes smells it. Alexander's response. The story goes that Alexander, still smiling, turned to his men and said, "If I were not Alexander, I would wish to be Diogenes." And in that sentence lies envy, wrapped in admiration. Because Alexander sees it now. All his power is borrowed, conditional, fragile. But Diogenes, his freedom is unshakable. His kingdom has no walls, but it can't be invaded either. And the sunlight? Even that he controls. If it happened in 2025, imagine this today. A world leader, a billionaire, a tech god, surrounded by cameras, security, advisors. He visits a homeless man meditating in a public park. He says, "Ask me for anything." And the man says, "Yes, please stop blocking the sun." Imagine the headlines, the TikTok clips, the think pieces, but also imagine how true it would still feel. Because even now, in a world of likes and status, we are starved for someone who doesn't play the game. The dog who barked at thrones. After Alexander leaves, Diogenes stretches. A child asks him, "Were you scared?" He laughs. "Of what? A man wearing metal and pride?" He wipes his mouth with his sleeve and scratches the dog beside him. The boy stares at him, wide-eyed. What would you do if he made you a general? Diogenes chews a fig. Command the army to go home and nap. Power cannot touch silence. There's a kind of power that breaks men. Swords, gold, flattery. But Diogenes discovered a different kind. The power of refusal. Not rebellion, not protest, just disinterest. He didn't try to escape the world. He let it pass through him. He didn't fight the king. He just denied his importance. And sometimes, that silence is louder than war drums. A quiet victory. Alexander leaves. The sun stays. Diogenes returns to his nap. No songs are written. No temples built. But something invisible shifts in the hearts of those watching. Because for the first time, they saw that a man with nothing could make the most powerful man in the world feel small. Would you dare say no to a king? Not out of pride, but because you simply didn't need him. Can you imagine needing so little that even the gods become irrelevant? Next part title: The time he threw away his last possession. Diogenes gives up even his clay cup after seeing a child drink with his hands. We explore his radical rejection of material need and the psychological power of a life stripped bare even of pride and minimalism. The time he threw away his last possession. You hear it before you see it. A soft clink, like a pebble tossed in a dry well. It's the sound of a small clay cup hitting the ground, cracking into 3 crooked pieces. You turn your head. There, beneath the olive trees, sits Diogenes. Barefoot, sunburned, skin like worn leather, hair tangled with wind. And near him, a boy, no more than 10 years old. Shirtless, smiling, crouched by the fountain, drinking water from cupped hands like a bird, like a child too wild to be taught otherwise. And Diogenes, watching, smiling too. But then he sighs, picks up the only object he owns, a simple cup he uses to drink water, and throws it. No anger, no drama, just release. A child has shamed me, he mutters. I still had more than I needed. And just like that, he owns nothing. Athens, around 334 BC years have passed since the sunlit showdown with Alexander. Diogenes is older now, his beard grayer, his body leaner than ever, stripped down by hunger, time, and choice. But something in him is sharper. His life has been a constant shedding of comforts, of pride, of social armor. And now, even the clay cup goes. It's almost absurd. A man who never bought a house, never owned a bed, still finds something to let go of. What's left now? Only breath, and the freedom that lives in its rhythm. The philosophy of the broken cup. You see, that cup wasn't just an object. It was a symbol. The last remnant of the idea that even a cynic philosopher needs something. But Diogenes had always believed that need is the birthplace of slavery. The fewer needs you have, the less anyone can control you. He didn't say that in a book. He said it by dropping a cup. Because philosophy, for him, wasn't language. It was gesture. And this gesture said, I am now more animal than man. And in that, I am finally honest. The psychology of voluntary poverty. You might think this is madness, masochism, a fetish for discomfort. But pause. What if Diogenes wasn't rejecting pleasure, but redefining it? Pleasure to him was not silk, nor spice, nor wine. It was the absence of craving. Craving makes you chase. Chasing makes you lie. Lying makes you someone else. But if you crave nothing, who can own you? When you drink with your hands, you remember. The body was built complete. The rest is costume. The boy who taught the philosopher. Let's talk about that child. No name, no background, just instinct. He crouches like a wild thing, slurping water without thought, giggling between gulps. He doesn't know Diogenes, doesn't know philosophy, doesn't know that today he became a teacher. Because in that moment, Diogenes saw purity untrained, a creature not yet corrupted by tools, not yet sold the idea that convenience is virtue. He sees himself before the words, and he envies it, throwing away the final mask. The cup wasn't comfort, it was pride, a proof that even the man who mocked kings still carried one tiny possession. But now, even that illusion is gone. I am no longer a man with a philosophy, he says. I am a breath passing through a body. This isn't giving up, it's completion. If he lived in 2025, you'd scroll past him. A man walking barefoot through a modern city, hands cupped, drinking from puddles, No phone, no bag, no credit history, no ID. He'd sit beside a broken fountain, laughing at your reusable water bottle, muttering, "Even your minimalism is branded." You'd label him a performance artist or a lunatic. But somewhere deep inside, his presence would sting. Because what if he wasn't performing? What if you were? Nature doesn't need accessories. Diogenes believed humans were the only creatures to complicate survival. Dogs don't carry cups. Birds don't wear shoes. Wolves don't need bank accounts. Only humans build systems that convince them they are incomplete without external things. So he stripped them all away until only the core animal remained. And in doing so, he became more than a man. He became a mirror, held up to you. The dawn after the cup. The next morning, a student approaches him. "How do you eat now?" "Like the birds," Diogenes replies, "with what the world gives freely. And if it gives nothing, then I fast and learn again what real hunger is." But isn't that suffering? Only for those still afraid to feel. His voice is calm. He's not trying to convince. He's simply being. And somehow, that's louder than sermons, a life lighter than air. He walks now with nothing. No bag, no robe, no bowl, only calloused feet, open hands, and a smirk that makes senators sweat. People mock him. Some pity him. But others quietly envy him. Because while the world is buried in clutter and longing, Diogenes floats through it all like a wind you can't bottle. What would happen if you let go of the last thing you think you need? Not the obvious luxuries, but the secret attachments. Could you still recognize yourself without your name, your phone, your comforts? Next part title: The Night He Was Caught. Pleasuring himself in public. This infamous and disturbing tale is more than shock value. We explore Diogenes' brutal confrontation with taboo, why he believed shame was society's greatest leash, and what this act reveals about human repression. The night he was caught. Pleasuring himself in public. It was late. The streets were quiet, the kind of silence that hangs between breath and shadow. Athens was asleep, but Diogenes was not. A dim oil lamp flickered near the corner of a crumbling column. Dogs roamed, sniffing the air for scraps. And there, beneath the arch of the old agora, he sat, legs open, cloak tossed aside, one hand between his thighs, the other resting on his knee like nothing mattered. And when a man gasped and shouted, "Have you no shame?" Diogenes simply looked up, calm as the moon, and said, "If only rubbing my stomach would cure hunger as easily." Athens, around 333 BC, the night of no boundaries. The story spread like wildfire, even in a city that tolerated nude statues and open philosophy debates. This was too far. But Diogenes didn't do it to shock. Not exactly. He did it to ask a question the polite world was too afraid to speak aloud. Why are you ashamed of what is natural, but not of what is cruel? He didn't believe the body was impure. He believed the lie about the body was impure. And he would rather discuss the powerful than let that lie fester unchallenged. The psychology of shame. Let's pause. Why was this so upsetting? Because it exposed something society works hard to bury, that even the most private hungers live right beneath the surface. And Diogenes touched that surface. He tore open the curtain of civility and said, "Look, this is you too. Under the robes, under the rules." He believed shame was a leash, taught by parents, reinforced by churches, weaponized by rulers, not to protect you, but to control you. They teach you to fear your own body, he once said, so they can offer salvation from it for a price. The taboo as a tool. He didn't enjoy violating taboo. He used it. It was his chalk on the walls of the human mind to scribble "why" where no one dared to write. When they jailed him for public indecency, he laughed. "You hide your sex, but not your greed. You shush my moans, but not the cries of the hungry." Which is more obscene? That wasn't vulgarity. That was surgical honesty. If he lived in 2025, you'd see it on the news. Disturbed vagrant arrested for indecent act in public park. You wouldn't click. Or maybe you would, just for the comments. But he wouldn't care. He'd say, "You all share pictures of your dinner, your lips, your gym routine. You expose your body every day, just not the parts you were told to hate." And in some quiet place in your brain, that thought would crawl into a corner and sit uncomfortably. What do you hide? Ask yourself, why do we hide what we all do? Why do we feel more shame about private instincts than about public cruelty? Why is lust whispered about, but corruption debated calmly on television? Diogenes didn't believe people were evil. He believed people were trained to be dishonest, especially about what made them human. Nature is not obscene, he said. Only the attempt to deny it. The dogs again. He learned it from the dogs. They scratched when itchy, barked when annoyed, mounted when aroused. No shame, no guilt, just being. And Diogenes? He called that divine honesty. Humans, he believed, were broken by a need to pretend. And so, if it meant showing his raw self in the middle of a city square just to destroy the illusion, he would do it. Even if the price was disgust. Even if they spat at him. Especially then. When asked why he did it, he gave many answers. Some sharp, some poetic. One time he said, "If modesty stops you from being honest, it is not virtue. It is vanity in disguise." Another time, "I would rather offend your manners than feed your delusions." And another, "I live like the body intends. You live like a rumor." He wasn't trying to gain followers. He was trying to make you uncomfortable enough to wake up. The silence. After the act, after they dragged him away that night, he said nothing. He slept on a cold floor, beside a leaking ceiling. The jailer stared at him like he was diseased, and Diogenes only smiled. I have done what few have the courage to do. Live in full view. No disguise, no edited version, just raw, real, unfiltered humanness. And that, ironically, is what made him most terrifying. Because if he could live like that, and not be destroyed, maybe the lies weren't necessary after all. A mirror. No one wants to look into. He didn't care if you hated him. He only cared that once you saw him, you could never unsee the truth he carried. You'd flinch, turn away, but somewhere deep inside, you'd whisper, "If I could live without shame, what would I become?" That question would live in you. That was his gift, or his curse. Have you ever done something natural and felt ashamed anyway? Who taught you that? Would you ever unlearn it if it meant being free? Next part title: The Night He Died Alone and Laughed as He Did. In his final moments, Diogenes refuses comfort, rituals, or sorrow. We explore his death as the final act of rebellion. No funeral, no monument, only a laugh echoing into the void. A meditation on the psychology of death, ego, and legacy. The night he died alone and laughed as he did. There was no crowd, no priests, no family, no final speech carved in stone, just a body, slumped near the edge of the agora, eyes half open, mouth caught in what looked like a smirk. It was the middle of the night. Athens slept, and the man they once called the dog, the cynic who barked at kings, slept in barrels. and dismantled illusions like tearing bread, was gone. Diogenes of Sinope had died, exactly as he lived, alone, laughing, and utterly free. Athens, 323 BC, a death without design. The year is heavy with change. Alexander the Great has just died in Babylon. The empire he carved out with blood and vision begins to crack like sun-dried clay. And yet, a smaller death stirs a deeper silence. Because this man, this wild, barefoot philosopher who owned nothing, somehow touched the soul of the city more than kings or generals ever could. But there is no procession for him, no chants, only whispers. Did you hear? The old madman is dead. What will they do with his body? Bury it? Burn it? They say he asked to be thrown outside the city, to feed the dogs. His last request: no tomb, no statue, no poetic inscription. Diogenes left behind one strange request: throw me outside the city walls so the wild animals may feast. A student had protested, but won't that desecrate your body? Don't you care what happens to you? Diogenes shrugged. Why should I? I won't be there. But don't you want dignity in death? He smiled. Dignity is for the living. The dead don't blush. The psychology of death without fear. Death, the great silencer, the one thing even kings can't avoid, the one thing most of us try not to think about. But Diogenes, he thought of little else, not with dread, but with curiosity. He believed the fear of death was the final chain, the last illusion. You spend your whole life building a mask, he said, and then you die wearing it. I die naked. He didn't want to be remembered. He wanted to be understood and then forgotten. Because even memory can be a form of vanity. No tomb, no legacy, just wind. The city debates what to do with his remains. Some want to burn them. Others want to bury him near the philosophers. But one student, still weeping, says, he once told me, let the wind carry me. That's all I ask. Let me return to the breath I once borrowed. So that's what they do. They wrap him in an old blanket, carry him to the outskirts, and leave him beneath a fig tree. No gravestone, no marker, just the wind whispering through the leaves like an old friend. The dogs that came. The next morning, people pass by, and they see something strange. 4 stray dogs, curled around his body, silent, still. They don't bark, don't fight, don't sniff. They simply keep vigil, as if they know the dog has returned to the pack. And in their quiet, they honor him more than any funeral ever could. If he lived in 2025, he wouldn't leave a will. No Twitter farewell. No pre-scheduled YouTube video titled, "If you're watching this, I'm dead." He'd vanish one day, maybe beneath a bridge, or on a beach, or in a field. And weeks later, someone would find a journal. One page, scribbled in dirt-stained handwriting. Don't mourn me. Mourn the things you clung to. I let go, that's all. And you wouldn't cry. Not exactly. But something would tighten in your chest. A whisper that maybe you've lived too carefully. Why die like that? Because for Diogenes, death wasn't the opposite of life. It was the punctuation. And how you place that punctuation defines the sentence. He chose a period, not an exclamation. No drama, no fear, no clinging, just full stop. He didn't fear being forgotten. He feared being misunderstood. And what better way to say, I own nothing, than to not even own a grave? One student remembers years later, a student builds a small stone circle on the spot. Not a grave, just a marker. And inside the circle, he writes in chalk, Here lies the man who laughed at death before it noticed. Every time it rains, the writing fades, and every time someone comes to rewrite it. But eventually, no one does. And Diogenes would have loved that. The sound that remains. Sometimes at night, the wind moves strangely through the city. It slips through alleyways, rustles the leaves, kicks dust over temple steps. And some say, if you listen closely, you'll hear it. A laugh, low, dry, like gravel in joy. Like someone who just saw through the last illusion and found it funny. It doesn't haunt you. It doesn't scare you. It just reminds you, you're still pretending. And he isn't. Would you be brave enough to die without a name? Without a legacy? Without the comfort of being remembered? Could you smile, knowing you left nothing behind but the sound of a laugh on the wind? Next, part title. He lives again in every outsider who refuses to bow. Though Diogenes is gone, his spirit lingers in every artist, rebel, monk, misfit, and truth-teller who lives outside the system. We explore how his defiance became a philosophy, a mirror, and a whisper passed down through centuries. He lives again in every outsider who refuses to bow. You're walking through a modern city. Glass towers claw at the sky. Traffic hums like a nervous heartbeat. Everyone is late for something. But then, you see someone. A man barefoot on the sidewalk, hair wild, sitting cross-legged beside a trash bin. Not begging, not broken, just still, watching, smiling. He holds a cardboard sign. It says nothing. People avoid him, as if his silence is contagious. But you stop, because in his eyes, you see something terrifying and magnetic. He doesn't need what you need. And suddenly, somewhere deep in your bones, you remember. Diogenes, a spirit. Too loud to stay dead. He's been gone for more than 2,000 years. No grave, no books, no empire. And yet, he lives. Not in statues, but in the cracks of society. In every place where someone says, "No, I will not bow." You find him in the whistleblower, in the street artist who paints truth on a banker's wall, in the monk who owns nothing but a bowl and a robe, in the child who questions a teacher's rules, in the wanderer who laughs when asked, "What do you do?" He's alive, not as a man, but as a challenge. The psychology of the outsider. Every society has its rules. Unspoken ones, too. Be polite, accumulate, fit in, stay silent. But occasionally someone won't. They live outside the walls, not because they were pushed, but because they refuse the bargain. And when they do, society tries to crush them, or laugh, or name them mad. Why? Because they are ungovernable, and that terrifies us. Diogenes didn't just escape the system, he unmasked it. He showed that most people live inside a lie. A lie they defend with jobs, routines, and polite conversation. And when someone walks by, laughing at the lie, it hurts. Why his spirit won't leave us alone. You think of him when you're alone at night scrolling. You have a warm bed, a decent job, clean clothes, but still, you feel caged. Not because you're poor, but because you know you've traded too much for safety. And then Diogenes returns, whispering, "If you dropped everything, who would you be?" Not the version of you on social media, not the worker, not the spouse, just you. Naked, real, unbranded. That question never stops echoing. He's the flame under your mask. You hear him in strange places. When you see a protester standing alone in front of riot police. When a child asks, "Why do we have to sit still?" When a janitor hums loudly in a boardroom hallway. When someone you love dares to say, "No, This life isn't mine. That's Diogenes, not in words, but in spirit. Every time someone chooses truth over comfort, exposure over image, freedom over applause, he laughs somewhere, and that laugh lives in you. If he walked among us today, he wouldn't be on TED Talks. He wouldn't be a guru with a podcast. He wouldn't be famous. He wouldn't even care if you listened. He'd sleep in a laundromat, eat what others throw away, refuse charity unless it came without pride. He'd bark at politicians, photobomb influencers, write, "You're not hungry, you're bored," in marker across a luxury billboard. And still, he'd smile at you, not out of pity, but out of hope. Because if you stopped pretending, even for a second, you'd see him not as insane, but as clear. Diogenes as DNA? He's not a man anymore. He's a strand of rebellious DNA in humanity. A kind of internal whisper that keeps asking, is this really necessary? Do you actually want this? Or were you taught to want it? Can you live without it? Can you laugh while doing so? That whisper doesn't go away. It lives in the artists, the fools, the barefoot preachers, the girl who cuts her hair short and stops smiling on command, the man who walks into the forest and never returns. He's always there, watching from the fringe, waiting to be heard. What he left behind. He wrote nothing, and yet he wrote everything on the skin of those who saw him. No rules, just a challenge. Can you live without pretending? It sounds simple, but it's the hardest thing in the world. And every generation gets a few people who try. They're called mad. They're laughed at. Then decades later, we call them prophets. Diogenes didn't care either way. He wasn't here for applause. He was here to be free and to ask, why aren't you? And so we end. Not with a lesson, but with a mirror. You don't need to sleep in a barrel. You don't need to mock kings. You don't need to throw your phone in the river. But maybe, just maybe, you can take one thing off. One expectation, one fear, one craving, and feel lighter. Diogenes would nod, not clap, not cheer, just nod. Closer, he'd say. Now go further. Because this was never about him. It was about you, and what you might become if you stopped pretending. Can you name one thing you carry that you don't actually need? Could you let it go? And if you did, would you finally meet the real you? Diogenes of Sinope, the man who needed nothing,